Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our next matchup for UFC Qatar. In this matchup, we have Bekzat Almakhan taking on Aleksandre Topuria. To be quite honest with you, this is not only my sleeper of the card, like quite possibly the best fight on the card, but this is also, I think, not my favorite fight on the card. It could be, honestly, but this is honestly the toughest fight for me to predict because you have two rising bantamweight prospects in one as in Bekzat Almakhan, who is a ferocious power puncher in this bantamweight division. You look at his record, right, 12-2, and if you'll give me one moment to load it up on my screen here, 10 of those wins are by knockout. He hits unnaturally hard for bantamweight. And you saw in his last fight at UFC 305 when he viciously knocked out Brad Katona. Then, made his debut about a year and 8 months ago. It was crazy, the inactivity. But you saw in that fight, he fought Umar, lost in that fight for sure. But he did drop Nurmagomedov, which says a lot about his power. Meanwhile, you got the elder brother of Ilia Topuria, Aleksandre Topuria, and he made his debut back at UFC 312 against Colby Thickens, where it wasn't the most overwhelming it wasn't the most spectacular performance, like, oh my God, this guy's going to run through these bantamweights. I wouldn't call it underwhelming per se. I mean, he had a very good, well-rounded fight against Thickens, good boxing, especially in close when he, which I'll delve into more as I talk about their styles. But Topuria put in a very well-rounded performance. Like I said, good close-range boxing, good takedowns, specifically that one suplex he threw, and overall just a well-rounded performance. But I feel like people overestimate, he's Ilya's brother, so he should have put on a better performance. Understand something, when Ilia Topuria made his debut against Yusuf Zalal, he didn't win by emphatic knockout or something. He won via decision. So I feel like we need to pump the brakes on saying, how really good is Topuria, because we don't fully know yet. I mean, he's only 6-1 as a pro. And before that fight against Dickens, his last fight was 2.5 years ago. And then before that, 3 years and 8 months. So it's been a while since Topuria has actually fought. So we're going to see. So, though, this is a great fight. These two are bantamweight prospects for sure. And actually, you look at the odds to they are basically a pick'em. So I'm very excited to talk about this fight. So let's start with apologies for that. My screen is great. Starting with Bekzat Almakhan. As I said before, he is a ferocious power puncher. Has pretty good timing too. You saw with the Brad Katona fight where he was able to time the uppercut as Katona is kind of dipping down for the takedown. Not to mention how he was able to clip Umar with it was a right hook, if I'm not mistaken. And so not only is it Bekzat's power is dangerous, but also his ability to time his shots very, very well. Now, looking a little bit more into kind of his abilities, I'd say he has some good grappling. Now, we haven't really seen it much in the UFC per se, since he got pretty out-grappled thoroughly by Umar, but, it's Umar. What do you expect? And then he didn't really need it at all against Brad Katona. He is a pretty patient operator, I would say. He does, even with his power, you don't see him rush into fights or force things. He's pretty smart, calculated, and has shown solid fight IQ across the board, whether it's working and striking or controlling his opponents. But it's mostly that power, man. That is the bread and butter, I think, of his game. One of Bekzat's standout traits is his ability to fight in any phase of the game. He's pretty comfortable on the feet. His boxing is pretty crisp as well. It's not just power. He has good timing and placement. But his grappling is pretty good, I'd say. But like I said, how good is it at the UFC level? He fought one of the best in the world right now. And then fought a guy who's no longer in the UFC and didn't really get the wrestling going. But make no mistake, Almakhan, he's got that well-rounded style where he can make adjustments as the fight goes on. If his striking isn't working, he could transition to his wrestling. And if he's having trouble with the takedowns, he's got the striking to keep the fight standing. And that can make him a pretty tough puzzle. Well, Now, looking at Aleksandre Topuria, as I said, not much in terms of the career. 6-1 as a pro, but he is 29, so there's still some time for him. But he is an absolute killer for sure. The problem is, you look at the records of some of these guys he is finishing, right. In his last 3 fights on the regional scene, he fought a 7-18 fighter, a 1-9 fighter, and then a 3-1 fighter before he made his debut. Now, make no mistake, he's an absolute killer. He's an aggressive, in-your-face style that's all about taking control of the fight right from the opening bell. His striking is heavy, his pressure is suffocating. He's got a solid ground game to boot. So whether it's striking or grappling, Topuria is very dangerous. Like his brother, I'd say though for Aleksandre, he has less power than Ilya, but similar boxing fundamentals. Topuria's striking is heavy-handed. He doesn't waste time setting up complex technique. He's all about putting the pressure on you and landing the big shots. You see it in that Thickens fight where he does a pretty standard high guard, but he's also rolling and advancing forward his opponents. So he's making himself a moving target while also a constant state of pressure. And his power is definitely a threat. He loves to stay in your face, makes you feel his presence in every exchange. The thing about me for this is, who has the solid boxing fundamental, or sorry, of the two, who has more solid boxing fundamentals and who's the harder hitter. But I'll get more into that when I talk about how they meet in the middle. I would also say what makes Topuria very dangerous is his ability to mix it up. He doesn't rely purely on striking. You've seen it. His grappling is just as good. He's got solid takedowns. And once the fight hits the floor, he's a problem with his ground and pound. He's got good submission and constant control. Pretty relentless, and he makes you fight at his pace. That aggressive style can sometimes work against him, especially runs into a fighter who can keep distance and make him pay for overcommitting. Or in the case of, oh my God, Bekzat, a fellow wrecking ball who can match Topuria. Now, on one hand, you've got Topuria, who I would argue is the smarter fighter too. Or I'm not saying Bekzat has low fight IQ, but I think Topuria might be a little higher. And he's a well-rounded fighter who can control the fight in multiple areas. Meanwhile, you got Almakhan, who's a high-pressure, aggressive fighter who wants to take control from the start and break his opponents. So it becomes this. You have Topuria, who has that calm, methodical approach where he'll stay patient and wait for his openings, while you have Bekzat, on the other hand, who likes to force those openings with power, speed, and relentless pressure. Now, that being said, Bekzat can fight off the back foot, but he's not as effective with it. But here's how I see it in terms of just basic bare bone. I think Topuria is overall the more fundamentally sound striker, but I'd say Bekzat has more power than him. So it'll be interesting. And it's not like Bekzat has no technique. He does have solid fundamentals. I just say Topuria's fundamental boxing is going to be just a bit better. But again, technique combined with power is what makes Bekzat so dangerous. I feel like if Bekzat can close the distance and get into his rhythm, that's going to be a real problem for Topuria, because Bekzat pressure could overwhelm Topuria. But the thing is, the thing with Topuria is that sometimes the thing with Bekzat is that he does leave openings because he's too aggressive. That's how Umar was able to get the takedown so effectively. Not just, how good of his wrestling, but also Bekzat kind of gave him some openings for that. So if Topuria can stay calm, avoid the big shots, and control the distance, he could frustrate Bekzat and make him pay. On the other hand, you got Topuria versatility, as he's not just someone who can get drawn into a fight or fight. If he can avoid it, if Topuria can avoid it, he'll fight smart. He'll use his wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and that could be a big difference maker. And if he can weather the early pressure and get the fight to the ground, he's got a lot of tools to control Bekzat on the ground. So for Topuria, the key to victory is patience. He's got to stay calm. He can't get sucked into Bekzat's aggressive pace and how do I want to say this? Get lulled into a brawl or stay too stationary where Bekzat can find an opening. While Bekzat, his key to victory is pressure. It's simple, patience versus pressure. For Bekzat, he needs to force Topuria to be into uncomfortable positions, close the distance quickly, and not give him room to breathe. And Topuria and Bekzat's power and aggression will be his best weapons. And if he can make Topuria, and he cannot let Topuria dictate the pace. If he can get Topuria on the back foot, force him into the clinch and wear him out, I think Bekzat can control this fight. As I said, this has been a very struggle for me because I know Topuria has very good technique, very well rounded. But at the same time, I think Bekzat can match him in the striking because while he may not be of the same technician, power is the great equalizer when it comes to that. So basically you have Bekzat's aggression and power that makes him a dangerous opponent, while at the same time you got Topuria, who is more composed, versatile, and ability to mix in striking with grappling. Could deal with Bekzat's pressure, but I gotta go with Bekzat Almakhan in this one. Trust me, this was a difficult fight for me to really think about it, but I generally have this rule where if, let's say, you have two fighters who are of almost similar technical abilities, right? Now, if one is of a bit of a higher technician, then it relies on the other fighter's attributes to help equalize things. And in this case, you have Bekzat, whose power is, like I said, legit in the bantamweight division. And he is almost technical on the feet as Topuria. And, I do think he has the wrestling grappling to handle Topuria as well. Obviously, like I said, Umar is Umar. And we didn't really see much of his grappling in the Brad Katona fight. But while this fight is purely on the feet, I favor Bekzat, who has a really good ability to find openings for his power shots, and that's what I ultimately think is going to help him win this fight. So once again, I'm going to pick Bekzat Almakhan. I'm going to pick him via. It's tough to say. I want to say knockout. Like I said, his power is legit. Now you look at Topuria's only loss; it was, granted, years ago, 10 and a half years ago, when he got KO'd by Ivana, I believe is how you pronounce it. And, that, like I said, that was many, many, many years ago, a decade and a half. But I think if anyone can crack Topuria's chin, I think it is Bekzat, who, like I said, hits with enormous power in this division. And so, like I said, one more time, I'm picking Bekzat Almakhan, and I'm picking him via knockout. But with that being said, that's been my breakdown of this fight. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And one more thing. I've officially reached 40 subscribers now. I know it may not be much yet, but you got to start somewhere. And right now I'm starting maybe small, but I do intend to keep growing as this channel continues. But I want to say to everybody who has subscribed to me and has followed me since I started this channel, which is now September, or so, about a month and a half or so. I just want to say thank you, and I'm glad you're all enjoying the ride. But that being said, stay calm, stay respectful, and enjoy the violence. See y'all next time.